All right, so I spent today working on the shader that I've been like thinking about for a long time. On this one, I added a couple of parameters. So there's like an outline that everybody does. There's like a traditional outline. I'm trying to tune it to be right, and this outline. All right, all of these markings operate off of off the viewing angle. So light comes in, and the black parts they are only viewable from certain angles. So see if I go this, see, except for the outline, this one too gray. I need to tune it. The markings are working better. The markings are only visible from extreme angles. Let's see, watch, and I was trying to get like this flowing ink effect. I think I'm getting pretty close. If I just change the shape of like this one to be more like a crescent shape, it'll look like flowing ink a lot easier because the when it eats it away, it kind of does it like in a circular pattern because your body's very circular. So it's like I almost have what I want. The only thing that I would really want is for that I still need to do is for over here where there's complete shadow. I need the markings to show up in the skin color like the opposite. So over here the markings are black, but when they're in complete shadow, I needed them to show up, or maybe or like in this neon purple. So what I'm trying to develop a toon shader that works in really dark environments, and that the character will still be really lit up in dark environments, like in a dungeon, and even if they're only lit up by like candle flame or by a campfire, because dungeons are dark. So this is I think this might end up being a dungeon crawler. So I need a toon shader that works in low light conditions. The problem with other toon shaders is that the colors are usually really washed out and everything's like really bright, so it doesn't really work that great in the dark. And I think with these kind of effects, like these super contrasting colors, I can get it to work inside of the darkness. I just need to tune it a little bit more, and the outlines are good. I just there's like a couple of things I don't like here. All right, right here, this outline effect here, like when the outline is too much right there, it's like it just like overtakes everything. Like it's too much. But if I lower it too much like this, then I won't get an outline around the body. So let's see if I can get this to work. Let the stripes go away so I can look at just the outline. There we go. Alright, so this is just the outline. This outline. And that's pretty good. I just need to tune it. Because I would like some deep parts like this. Maybe this should be like another shading right here. It's a little bit lighter. But I want it to be like almost traditional outline like this. It just goes off the edges. So what I did was I made this outline work only at extreme angles. So I thought that whenever there's a mesh, if you look at the if you whenever you're looking at the edge of the mesh, as long as it's not like a square, you're gonna look at this portion of the mesh at a very extreme angle. So I wrote the shader in a way so that these only appear at extreme angles, and I haven't tuned it yet for the markings. But for the markings, I'm trying to get them to have like space right here in the middle where there doesn't show the markings, and then it only shows the markings from extremely low angles and from extremely high angles. And I'll probably put another island in the middle so you can see it, so you can see the markings when they're face on, when they're head on. And so there'll be like a spot, there'll be like an angle, there'll be like two angular spots where you don't see the markings, so they can still like flow. So I want it to be, if you look at it head on, the markings will be there. If you look at it from a slight angle, they'll go away, and if you look at it from another angle, they'll come back. So it's almost there. There's like a middle range that I need to implement, and then I need to change the shape of the markings so they're more like tapered at the ends and then round in the middle, so they'll look more like flowing ink, like if this was like hand painted almost. Alright, let me switch to Blender so you can see how these I did these markings. Let's see, Blender. It's a correct file. There we go. So all I ended up doing was just making a texture file and just drawing these white markings. And whatever's white will show up on the model as whatever color I choose. So on the model, these are black. So whatever is white will be black on the model, and whatever is black is just ignored on here. So I just painted it. I just painted it with texture painting. Whatever is this, like that'll be a marking. That'll be a marking. And I just kind of try to make them flow like through the curvatures. But what I really need to do next is to like make them more like a shape like this. That'll be really like that'll look really good in the way that it fades out. It needs to be like tapered at the end, and then like fat right here, and then a little bit of tapering, like a little bit like water, and then it'll this way when it gets eaten away at the angles where it doesn't show up as it's being taken away, like when it gets eaten away, the angles will be like this, like really sharp angles, and then it'll still look like it's tapering water, even if there's like a sharp line right here. So it'll still look like flowing ink. So I need to work on it more. So this would be a pretty good shape right here. And I was just testing it, but I need to edit all of the little markings so that they'll all be like that. Like this one needs to be tapered right here, and then get fat right here, and maybe like a little bit like that, and then that way when it goes away, it'll look like flowing ink on the main model. And I still need to finish up the clothing, and I'm gonna apply this effect to everything. Just depending on viewing, I think it will look really cool, especially when the lights are not static. If they're like flickering lights, like next to a campfire or next to a bonfire or torches, like this moving ink will be like constantly moving. Like this will be like here, and then it'll be over there, and then like so it'll be like very active. Even if you're standing still, it's gonna be like a very active movement. And since these outlines pretty much are gonna be what determines how you see the character in low light, like the flickering effects are gonna make the illusion that you still kind of see the character, but they're not, even if they're in low light. So I think that'll be a really cool effect. Let's look at the shader graph that I made. I'm still working on it. Let me switch back to Unity. All right, let's look at the shader graph. Oh, that's another project. All right, where is it? Here. So I went through Unity's open project, and I got some of the shader nodes that they made, because the things that their custom nodes give you are values from the shadows. Let's see where it's at. Oh, this one. This is a custom node that Unity released, and here it gives you the self shadowing and the shadow attenuation, which are really important because they're not really accessible to shader graph without popping in here, and then you have to write a custom HLS file. Here's like some of the, see if I can see some of it. Let's see, it's called Mainlight. Let me find it here. Mainlight. Here. Let's see if I can see. I won't show me the code. Wait, did I click on the wrong one? Oh yeah, that's a subgraph. Where's the HLS file? Or this might have a different name. Oh, it's called custom lighting. Here. All right, here's the HLS file that I was trying to click on. Not this one. This is an example I was looking at. Here, so in this HLS file, it does a bunch of stuff. The main thing is this light. It has access to the class of light, so it can grab the main light color, which is the color of the ray that is shined on a surface. So this is a good one, and this one is even more important. This is attenuation as well, for how everything's gonna get less bright as it's further away from the camera. Let's see. Over here, something specular. I'm looking for the shadow. shadow attenuation here. It gives access to this, which is not available in Unity shader graph, and this is what gives the shadows that are cast onto the object. And I think self shadow is in here. It's called something else though. Right, back to shader graph. Alright, so I'm pointing that out because in this area, here, the shadow attenuation, oh, let me get this one. Back to first now. Alright, it's called first now, but this is my shooter. Alright, so I'm making use of the self shadow quite a lot because I'm trying to get it to look right, basically. I'm trying to get like the different lines. Like right here, I did a bunch of math and then I basically abused this gradient because now shader graph has HDR capabilities, which means that if you have a color, if you have a color and you start turning up the HDR intensity, you can force the middle of that color to be way brighter than the surrounding color. So this is a two-dimensional color gradient, but if you start cranking up the HDR, you can get these middle parts of the color to get way past 1, and they start getting brighter. And this gives really cool effects. Like this stripe right here, like this is actually one color, but because of this HDR abuse, it has like a nice white in the middle that it looks like kind of like lightning. And I'm taking advantage of it in this scene. Like that's this right here. Like this is not a flat color. This is like a white gradient inside of the gradient. And I'm using it for a lot of things too. Also, this part of the shading right here, that's like this part of the white that's brighter than this pink area right here. That also comes from the HDR. That's this region right here. Here, it's taking advantage of this right here. This way brighter purple that's brighter than that pink that it's actually set to. So this is the actual color of the color. I'll click on it, but I don't think it's gonna show up on the video. Let me see. Yeah, the pop-up window for the color picker doesn't show up, unfortunately. I'll include. Let's see if I can include a picture of it, and I'll add it in post. But yeah, on the pop-up color picker, there's a new section that has +1, +2, -1, -2 to add HDR components to the color, so you can get like these really cool effects. The way that I did this shader graph was the way the moving ink works is that I took the normal vector and dotted it with the view direction, and this produces a value from 0 to 1 depending on the viewing angle. So it's from 0 to 360 will give you different values. So then I took this dot product is pretty much the input, and I put it into a comparison. So the dot product is compared against the minimum viewing angle that I want and the maximum viewing angle that I want for the ink. And if it's lower than the minimum viewing angle or larger than the viewing angle, you'll get a specular reflection, and the ink will show up on the model. But if it's in a dead zone in between these two values, there's not gonna be anything. It won't show up. And I just did a bunch of stuff. Like here's the what I drew in Blender, those white stripes. It just samples the gradient, and then it just did a bunch of math to just make it look a lot better. Let's see. I combined the different channels RGB into one, and then I clamped it to 0 to 1 just to make sure that I wouldn't get any weird effects. And right here, this is what turns it on and off. Here's a comparison. So if the dot angle here, the dot angle for the viewing angle is not correct, if the angle you're viewing the surface is not extreme enough, it won't show it because it'll do it through here. Here's the pattern that'll show if the dot angles are within range, but if they're out of range, it'll just go completely black and it won't show anything. And here's the logic. Although I need to replace this probably with XOR. I don't think AND is actually correct. Let's see. This just does the intensity of these white areas, so I can make it dimmer or brighter. And right here is the traditional dot product. So this is the regular specular value from the dot product, and then I just overlay my image over the regular one through an addition. And here it is. This is the outline here. The outline that would go at the outside of the body. So this part right here, this outer rim, is this. Let me turn off the effects. Okay, there you go. So, that's not. Can't see it easily enough. Let me turn it up. All right. So this is the outline. This is the outside of that circle. So this outline is that. If I turn it up, the circle becomes closer to the middle, and then the markings are always static unless I turn down their intensity. And then it does a bunch of stuff. It combines a bunch of stuff, and then I add the skin color here. Right here, I'll probably also replace this with a skin texture, so I can paint the skin to have like different gradients depending on like what parts of the body it is. Because like areas like the armpits and behind the knee, because the skin is more compressed, it has to be a darker color. So right now I'm just using a uniform skin color that's selectable through the inspector, and it's this color right here for right now. Then this skin, let's see, the pattern and the skin color go up here, and then they gain shadows. The skin color, and the outline, they start to interact with the shadows, and they get multiplied. And then I did a bunch of remapping just to get the values perfect. And I'm still gonna add more range with these other step functions, but I haven't implemented it yet. And so those values come over here. The shadow, first the shadow gets turned into these colors, into these like extreme purple colors. I'll probably change the purple later on. For right now, I'm just using it because it's a good like surface to look at. It's really easy to like. Oops. And the scene, it's like really easy to see the differences because I really need to determine where the brightest points are and just like so I can tune everything. So then the shadow turns into these layers of purple, and then the purple gets multiplied by the right here, the skin and the pattern, which is activated or not activated depending on the viewing angle. So then this interacts with the shadow, and then it goes into the emission. So most of it is actually done in the emission. So if I take the base color is just like the skin, except for the parts that are lit up by the outline and the pattern. So the base color is just the skin shadowed, and the emission is the outline and the skin patterns. The base color is actually not that important because I could actually combine this into the emission, because once you have the emission going, because of all the math, actually if you I can put all of this shadow math into the emission, so the base color wouldn't even be necessary, and I could like completely open up this shadow. Because I was looking at shaders that other people have done, the Toon shaders, and they never even use the base color. They just put everything into the emission and they do a bunch of math to simulate that there's some sort of base color. But I really didn't like them the way that happened, because I did some lighting experiments, and without the base color, there's like some weird open loop of lighting. So when you're next to a weird light source that's like really red or really blue, the emission goes out of control, and then like all the colors look really screwed up and like pixelated and stuff. So I think having a base color is actually a good idea, because it like limits what can go wrong with the emissions. So I think it looks better too. Like once I put the skin through here, let me disconnect it and we'll see what it looks like without the skin. Oh, I clicked the wrong thing. Okay, I removed the base color from the skin, and then let's look at the scene again. See that this is just the emission, and I could I could change the emission to also simulate the skin, but it won't take advantage of a lot of like lighting stuff. So what I actually want to do is add some HDR, I mean, some PBR texture stuff to it. And the emission is not really used too much in PBR textures. Like a lot of things actually don't use the emission because it's more like a light source. So I can have this just, for shading and stuff to do the shadows and have like these extreme things and have like what I want with these with the skin markings that which fade in and out depending on the viewing angle. Like I can have all of that, and I can also have the PBR style stuff because the markings and the shadowing so far only occupy the emission. I can still take advantage of everything else. I can still use metallic, smoothness, base color to just like amplify the model even more, like and go beyond what's been done so far with toon shading that I've seen and everything. Because so far everything has been emission based, and all the toon shading that I've seen, everything's been emission based, and even the metallic has been simulated through emissions. But now I can actually use metallic. I can just like crank it up like if it was a real material, and then it'll interact with the rest of the lighting components that are inside of the PBR framework. So yeah, I still have some work to do, but so far it looks really promising.